Mr. Powell and the president share important goals, Mr. Kudlow said. President Trump has not made the phone call, but he believes, or he is concerned, that the Fed is moving its target rate up too high and too rapidly. That's his view. Markets analysis. 3 reasons the Fed is raising interest rates. Your browser does not support HTML5 video.0:00. 0:00 skip 1815. President Trump has put the Federal Reserve at the middle of the latest drop in the markets, saying the Fed has gone crazy. Wall Street Journal Global Economics Senator John Hilsenrath explores 3 reasons why the Fed is raising interest rates. Photo, Getty Images. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal last week, Mr. Trump acknowledged the independence the Fed has long enjoyed in setting interest rate policy, while also making clear he was sending a message to Mr. Powell that he wanted lower interest rates. In the interview, the president built on similar remarks he had made over the past several months to reporters and on Twitter. Every time we do something great, he raises the interest rates, Mr. Trump said, adding that Mr. Powell almost looks like he's happy raising interest rates. The president declined to elaborate, and a spokeswoman for the Fed declined to comment. Mr. Trump said it was too early to say, but maybe he regrets nominating Mr. Powell to lead the central bank. Mr. Powell took the Fed helm in February. Fed officials raised the central bank's benchmark interest rate in September to a range between 2% and 2.25%, and signaled officials expect to raise it again at their December meeting. The Fed is likely to leave the rate unchanged at its meeting next week, November 7 to 8. Mr. Powell hasn't publicly responded to Mr. Trump's criticisms, and has said the Fed is gradually raising rates to keep the economic expansion on an even keel. The Fed and the administration have similar goals, that is to say non-inflationary growth, Mr. Kudlow added. I think that over time that will become more and more apparent. Larry Kudlow speaks to the news media outside the White House on October 23. Photo, Jim Lo Scalzo EPA/Rex/Shutterstock. More politics. Mr. Kudlow also discussed how next week's midterm election could affect the administration's ability to pass legislation should Democrats win a majority in either chamber of Congress. He acknowledged there is a possibility that Democrats will win control of the House of Representatives, and he said they would seek to raise taxes and reverse Mr. Trump's tax cuts, which he signed into law last year. Asked whether Mr. Trump would consider a tax increase as part of a budget deal with Democrats, should they win the House, Mr. Kudlow said, absolutely not. They want to overturn the tax bill. It won't get through the Senate, and if it ever did, President Trump would veto it, he said. I can't predict the world, but I will say at the present time I do not believe we will raise taxes. Mr. Kudlow said annual economic growth of 3% would need to be sustained for at least 10 years for tax revenue to wipe out the federal budget deficit. He predicted growth of 3% in 2019, calling it the Kudlow forecast. He also expressed his objection to raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour from its current level of $7.25, calling it a terrible idea. Amazon.com Incorporated raised its minimum wage, beginning Thursday, to $15 an hour, firing back at criticism over its compensation for warehouse workers and stoking competition for labor in the holiday shopping period. Mr. Kudlow said that while a company as large as Amazon, which has a market value of nearly $1 trillion and revenue last year of $178 billion, can probably absorb the added costs, a higher federal minimum wage threatens to damage small businesses in particular. Idaho is different than New York. Alabama is different than Nebraska. That's why the federal minimum wage doesn't work for me. Write to Vivian Salama at vivian.salama@wsj.com.